There's a lot of drivers to the price of Bitcoin, right? There's geopolitical drivers, there's technological, there's regulatory to go with investor demand. So it's hard to isolate any one factor. Kind of within the Bitcoin community, this rise over the last month, I think generally is thought of to be driven by primarily three things. The first is the net effect of the trade war with China and the U.S. is that the yuan is hitting a 6-month low. Much of the rise of Bitcoin in 2017 came out of Asia, countries like Korea and China that have capital controls, and there were, in many people's minds, devaluing that currency, and therefore Bitcoin was either a hedge or just an outright way to get capital outside of that country.
Right.
I think that the second is that there's a Bitcoin conference in New York called Consensus. It's a very large conference, and I think going into that weekend, the price went from 6,000 to 8,000. And certainly going in and coming out of that conference, there's a tremendous amount of excitement about U.S. regulated platforms like NYSE's backed the Fidelity platform and the ErisX platform.
Right.
Really, the big one is that there is a tremendous amount of optimism about U.S. brokerages, particularly online brokerages, offering Bitcoin to retail customers in 2019. And so while no one's come out and said that openly, there's a lot of talk about that, and I think people are buying Bitcoin ahead of potentially that new investor demand.
What kind of volume has been involved in this move? And there's always been an inherent skepticism, if not cynicism, that there's manipulation in this market. What do you think about both of those issues?
So so the liquidity it's hard to ascertain the number, right? Because it's a disparate marketplace around the world. So I look at the regulated exchanges for real volume. If you look at the U.S. Futures are trading like $100 or $200 million a day. In this most recent rally, they've been trading like $600 million a day. I think that's where institutional investors are going to find liquidity, or exchanges that are regulated by U.S.
Do you
agencies.
think that you can sell in size right now at price?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think that there's way more liquidity in the marketplace than most people would ever need. Some people point to $1 billion a day of liquidity. $600 million in the futures is just one facet of it. There's right. Other exchanges. So yes, I think there's institutional liquidity available, and firms like Susquehanna provide it.
Go ahead, Richard.
I want to ask a basic question. If you look at the volatility over time of Bitcoin, there's no way you can consider it a store of value or a reliable medium of exchange. So my basic question, which I'm sure have been addressing for a long time, isn't this just purely a speculative medium? Is there anything else to this other than that?
I mean, it's certainly speculative, and it's risky, and whether it will work depends on what it is, right? Is it a store of value? People who are bearish on that would say it's too volatile, and I would argue that it's kind of in a nascent phase, and as a broader adoption occurred, the volatility would damper, right? And some people think it's a cross-border remittance, or the native currency of the internet, and can it scale to 40,000 transactions a minute like Visa and Mastercard? Maybe. If it did, that would be pretty meaningful. But it's risky, and risk in and of itself should have returns associated with it. The question is, do you understand the risk, and are you taking the appropriate amount?
Bart, the other question I had was, people talk about this as a store of value. I know we debate that issue, but if you think gold is a store of value, shouldn't this operate not in tandem with gold, but actually at the opposite ends of gold? I mean, in terms of the diversion we should see in terms of price.
I think replacing gold is a fairly aspirational endeavor. But if it were to get there, some people would argue that if using simple math, that a Bitcoin could be worth $400,000 a Bitcoin. So will it replace gold? I don't know.
Right.
What I would say is it's worth $8,700 today. So people who say that it has no value because it's not backed by anything.
But 3 months ago it was worth $3,000.
And price is what you pay, value is what you get. So value is the question mark here.
Right. Well, and so then I can get $8,700 worth of stuff for it today.
Right.
And it's been around for 125 months. And if you bought a Bitcoin in 120 of those months, you're up. So, like, as much as people want to say it's this risky, toxic, speculative thing, find me $135 billion
But how much of it is
asset.
dependent? I mean, you're talking about retail getting involved all over again, and there were a lot of people who were burned retail, if you will, the first time, or not even the first time around, multiple times since it's been a bit of a roller coaster across the board. Are all those is retail really going to pile into this, or is the idea that you're hoping that they pile in, and then are they left holding the bag?
Well, again, I'm not a Bitcoin evangelist, right? So it's not my job to convert the unconverted, and I'm not necessarily rooting for anything. I'm a market maker. I provide liquidity. I think the beautiful thing about the capital market structure is if you think that Bitcoin isn't worth anything, you can short it, right? You can borrow it and sell it. You can sell a future and then cover later when it goes lower. So I'm not making a price prognostication.